What's shaken? My name's Cam, welcome back to another video. So with the Rings of Power show drawing closer by the day, I've been getting back into a real kind of Lord of the Rings mood. It's had me thinking about how fun it is to be that annoying friend. You know the one, you're trying to watch the movie and they hit you with the...
Did you know that when they filmed this scene, Viggo Mortensen actually broke his...
Anyway, there's quite a few fun Lord of the Rings facts from the books that you can badger people with. The absolute losers who have not memorized every single aspect of the lore behind Lord of the Rings. Here are some of the facts that you can hit them up with. And I'll be honest, I didn't know about most of these until embarrassingly late in my Middle-earth fandom. These are things that people have either told me or things I've come across in Reddit threads or in TikToks from that guy with the likable face. He just kind of seems like he'd help you move house without even complaining about it, you know? And hey, if there's any Middle-earth lore that you think is relatively unknown, interesting, or just plain funny, leave a comment. So when you watch the movies, it's very easy to think that the Balrogs are just kind of another one of Middle-earth's many monsters, another like kind of mindless animal, basically. They're awesome and they're terrifying, but it's also crazy to think that they're actually from the same race or species as Gandalf, and I guess technically Sauron as well. The Maiar, basically demigods created by the Valar to get things done. Things like forming the world of Middle-earth and guiding the people within it. Fun fact within a fun fact is that Gandalf, who is actually more of a celestial being rather than a common wizard like Professor Dumbledore,
your trust, kid.
Only took the shape of an old man so that he could be better seen as a wise or trustworthy dude in his adventures through Middle-earth. Anyway, like a lot of Tolkien lore, there is a lot you could go into here, but to really dot point it, some of the Maiar were corrupted when they followed the path of Melkor, Melkor being like Sauron's boss. They were corrupted, bingo bango, you have the fearsome Balrog.
What is this new death ray?
Here comes Balrog.
So this is something I only actually found out kind of recently, and it's actually like thrown me a loop. It is that in other drafts for Lord of the Rings, a lot of the characters looked very different, one of which being our favorite Chad swordsman, Aragorn. And the most adorable version of Aragorn in the early drafts of Lord of the Rings was a hobbit named Trotter. Somewhere out there in an alternate timeline is a version of Lord of the Rings where instead of Strider, we get Peregrine Boffin, aka Trotter, cousin of Bilbo Baggins. And he got the name Trotter because after some less than ideal treatment in his time as a prisoner in Mordor, his feet got kind of messed up and Gandalf made him some new wooden ones.
Cease!
So instead of meeting the other hobbits at the Prancing Pony, he would have tagged along with Gandalf to go seek counsel from Saruman. Now, as fun as it is to like imagine this version of Aragorn, I think making Strider a Dunedain man was a good move. It does do a good job of separating him from everyone else and kind of giving him his own interesting identity, which is pretty important for a character that ends up being the king. Okay, so this fact has been at the center of some pretty fascinating debate, but at the end of the day, most people agree on two things. One, Tolkien did envision the elves with pointed ears, but two, this was never explicitly stated in the story, so in the early days it's entirely possible that a lot of people read Lord of the Rings without picturing the elves as having pointed ears. So as we all know, the fun part about Lord of the Rings is that an enormous amount of the minutiae in the lore is buried in like other books or letters or post-it notes or on the back of burger wrappers, and the pointed elf ears topic drags you into the Tolkien letters, which are famous for clarifying certain things that people to this day are pretty unsure about. With all that said though, the best summary I could find was this reply on a forum thread. And yeah, I may have the forehead of that guy from Sky High, but I don't have the memory, unfortunately, so I'm fine with trusting the person who made this comment. Do Tolkien's elves and hobbits have pointed ears? Yes, they do. Tolkien doesn't often dwell on describing the minute physical details of his characters, so it's possible to read The Lord of the Rings and his other writings without noticing that either elves or hobbits have pointed ears. However, in a 1938 letter, number 27, paragraph 35, to his American publishers, Tolkien says, "Hobbits have a round, jovial face, with ears only slightly pointed and elvish." From this, it is clear that elvish ears were more obviously pointed. This was confirmed when The Lost Road was published in 1987. In the etymologies under the first definition of LAS, which is the element in las meaning leaf, there is this note: the Quendian ears were more pointed and leaf-shaped than human. So there you go. I mean, that's one of the fun things about Lord of the Rings. Fun depending on who you're talking to, but debating about what Tolkien intended at certain points is kind of fun. It's like discovering new things all the time, even if some people take it way too seriously and get on their high horse about it. So while we're on the topic of interpreting Tolkien's vision, I want to mention one of the most extreme but fun examples of a change being made in an adaptation. Now, when it comes to the upcoming TV show, I'd rather dive headfirst and naked into the fires of Mount Doom than get involved in any of that contentious discourse, around changing Tolkien's lore. But I think a lot of people who love the trilogy, like me, best movies ever made, mate, do tend to forget just how much was changed from the source material and didn't end up ruining everything. My point is that one of the biggest changes ever made in a Lord of the Rings adaptation was in the trilogy, namely the main antagonist and arguably the most iconic figurehead of the entire franchise, the Flaming Eye of Sauron. Put simply, this symbol, the eye as we know it, wasn't in the books. And it could be said that the eye through which Sauron influences the story on a visual level was the main villain of the trilogy, of the movies. And that's again keeping in mind it wasn't part of the lore. Personally, I think it was a fantastic idea when it comes to Lord of the Rings being adapted because it helps make Sauron's presence more palpable and dangerous no matter where the heroes are. This big flaming eye, which is almost omnipotent, really feels like it's looking over their shoulder through the entire journey, and I just don't think you would have got that same effect if Sauron was just a dude, And even in a fantasy sense, the flaming eye existing doesn't make any scientific or logical sense within the story, but in a world of magic, it's cool and it works. So the next one is just one of those fun things that you can annoy people with while you're watching the movies. In the book, Gandalf never said the iconic line, "You shall not pass." What he did say was, "You cannot pass," and then he followed it with a little mini kind of dialogue that is weaved into the movie as well a bit. And I know it's a tiny change, but it's one of those small things that just sound cooler and works better when you're watching it on the screen. "You shall not pass" was one of the many awesome gems added into the script by Fran Walsh, who is Peter Jackson's wife and the screenwriter for the trilogy. She won an Oscar for the screenwriting and also won an Oscar for the lyrics to the song Into the West from the third movie in the series, Return of the King. What a legend. So there's a few of my favorite Lord of the Rings lore or book facts. Obviously there's a billion more things that could be said or discussed about the incredible world that Tolkien made. Before you go though, something you should know about me is that I'm super easy to please when it comes to storytelling, especially fantasy. Even though I'll agree that the Hobbit movies don't hold a candle to the original trilogy, I still really love them for the good moments and for, above all, the fact that we got to go back into this world. I gotta be honest, I am excited for the show. I'll confess, I am worried and I am quite concerned because I don't trust Amazon and their habit of creating hollow crowd pleasers that don't risk losing a penny by taking bold creative risks like the original movies did. But one way or another, we get to go back to Middle Earth for a bit, so yeah, I'm excited. I really want to trust that the cast and crew will do their best to tell a great story, even if that means taking some liberties with the source material that they're referring to. After the Wheel of Time, it is hard to be optimistic about it, but I'm going to try to be, whether or not Rings of Power sticks by Tolkien's every word and whim, because God knows the trilogy didn't. And look how that turned out. Thank you so much for watching, especially for watching through the whole video. You are my favorite. Are there any Lord of the Rings book or lore facts that you want to tell me about? Leave a comment. I make videos all the time on fantasy and horror books, so if that's your kind of thing, I would love it if you stuck around. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Catch ya.